Hey,
Mr. Clayton, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Nothing much. Nothing much. Just getting caught up on the sports updates. I know you've had an eventful last month, right? Just got home.
I have had an eventful last month or so. Yeah, I got home, came back from Tokyo on September 3rd.
September 3rd. Okay, so it was a pretty quick turnaround. Just to let you guys know, fans, I contacted Clayton's producer while he was gone. He's like, Clayton's gone right now. I was like, okay, we'll just talk to him when he gets back. So busy man with a busy schedule. But I definitely, I'm thankful to have you on the Breakroom Breakdown Sports Podcast. And we're here. We got to give the fans what they pay for. So the biggest thing is, one, obviously, I want to know more about you. I want to know what inspired you to start to co-found Angel City Sports and ultimately become like this valuable member of the Paralympic community.
Well, thank you. Yes. Well, hopefully I can keep providing value and people have me. Yeah. So I've had quite I don't know what the right word is, sort of a wayward career, dabbling in academia and working in the government, and then getting an MBA and going kind of into the business world. Mm-hmm. And I never imagined I would be in the world of sports and disability.
Wow.
Never really crossed my mind. Always loved sports, always played sports. I still surf, I skateboard with my 9-year-old, I snowboard. I'm still pretty active, but just didn't think that was in the cards. Mm-hmm. And, the place where disability and sport really sort of enter my life is a little over 16 years ago with the birth of my first son. And so he was born, we call it limb different or limb deficient even. He was a congenital amputee. So he was missing his left knee and left fibula, which is the shin bone. And then on his left hand, he only had one finger. And everything else was healthy. Everything checked out beautifully. You could tell even just right after he was born, he was following voices, smiling. He was a little guy. He just had a couple parts missing. And so, my wife and I went through a lot those first few days, just trying to figure out what does this mean? And, thankfully everything else checked out okay. So we didn't have heart or lung or, any other health issues. Mm-hmm. And it's a beautiful little guy. And so we, started piecing together the strategy for how to raise him. And it's interesting. We named him Ezra, which is an Old Testament name, which means the helper or the teacher. And we didn't really know the journey he was going to take in life, but figured, hey, he's gonna teach people about being different. He's gonna teach people about disability, and so that's where sort of disability entered my life. And
wow,
sports really was because of him. It's something that listen. To be honest, when he was first born, that first summer, I really struggled.
Sure,
because I thought being a good father was getting outside, playing sports, hiking, biking, whatever, whatever.
The usual American.
Yeah. Like, that's kind of what I thought being a father was. And I thought, ooh, wow, I don't know how to do fathering, for a kid with a disability. And so I kind of laugh at myself 16 years ago because I was blind. I didn't understand what the world that I was about to, join. So really, following a little bit of my passion and my heart that loves being outside and doing sports, and then because he was the craziest little kid because he went crazy for sports from an early age. Like we joke, but it's true. He literally said ball before he said mom or dad.
So I'm assuming you couldn't tell young Ezra that that he had a disability. He just thought life was regular life. That's good.
You're right. And there is a moment in his younger years where he realized, whoa, I don't have the same leg as you, mom or dad. At the point he figured that out, but he hit all of his milestones as a little guy, and we had to get him a prosthetic. He was 11 months old when he started, pulling himself up to stand. And, and that's a great story because we put this prosthetic leg on him And he turns around and looks at my wife and I, and it was like, he didn't talk then. He's only 11 months old, but he looked at us like, where's the leg been? You know,
why didn't you get this to me sooner?
And he like walks around this table like right away. It was like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. But yeah, this kid just always loved sport. And, you know, because he's an amputee and he's had a running blade, you know, one of those curved feet, that he's been able to kind of mainstream in sport. So it's not the case for everyone living with a physical disability. So if you're, you know, in a chair or have something more, you know, a more severe impairment, or you're blind, it is tricky to integrate into mainstream sport. Not impossible, but it's harder. But he's, you know, he's up and running and he's pretty quick on his blade. So he played flag football, soccer, baseball, you name it, the kid was playing, you know, and he's a good athlete. He's really like high IQ athlete, and played club basketball, you know, played for his school, played a lot of sports.
So he's a multi-sport athlite. Wow.
He is. He's a really good basketball player. He's a really good basketball player, and he's got a great shot because because he's an amputee and he's basically playing on one leg. His positioning and his core is always upright in like a shooting position, right? He's always ready to go. So we just kind of learned that along the way. But yeah, and then, you know, where kind of his journey and my professional journey start to kind of connect is he's 8 years old, and I got advice from a Paralympian, John Siciliano, who ran in the 96 Paralympic Games in Atlanta. And he said, he's about 8 years old, take him to this event, which is the Endeavor Games. And we went. It was in Oklahoma, big Paralympic competition, one of the best events in the country. And I got inspired on the track that Sunday. It was like hot and humid, Tornado Alley, you know, and I just thought, let's bring this to LA. You know, we've got weather and facilities and 20 million people in Southern California. Let's not force Californians to have to go to Oklahoma. It's expensive, time, resources. You know, let's solve this. Let's create, you know, access and do free programming for this community in Southern California. So that's kind of where it got started. You know, we've grown and evolved over the years. But first Angel City Games, which is our big Paralympic competition, in 2015, and I've been kind of, you know, trudging along or building this nonprofit ever since.
Wow. So, I mean, I guess I feel like all great things happen it's almost like they happen, you stumble into them, they just happen on accident. It's not intentional. So no, that's really great to hear how it, everything built up. And once again, I've got a chance to look and see some things on Ezra, and he looks like just an amazing, very happy young man. So, and I like how you said that, you know, even though he's disabled, he's even more blessed than other people in some ways that are disabled. So you got to be appreciated for what it is. So
well, you know what he calls it?
What does he call it?
He calls it his golden ticket.
That's funny to me. I'm sorry. He calls his golden ticket.
He just came up with it recently. He's like, yeah, my disability is like my golden ticket because I have an opportunity to educate, teach, and really ultimately inspire everyone around me. And so he does see it as a blessing. And he's, you know, listen, it's not always easy, but he's sort of had that, you know, that mindset since he was a pretty young guy.
Wow. So I do want to talk a little bit about the Paralympics, because I've never gotten the chance to go. And you mentioned this Angel City Games. I'm definitely going to have to get the dates and come to the next one. So I'm excited for that. But outside of, you've gotten a chance to go to the actual Paralympics, like how would you say it differs from the regular, outside of the obvious, how does it differ from the regular Olympics? Are there games in the Paralympics that they put a little bit more emphasis on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to start at like a really high level, right? Mm-hmm. The International Olympic Committee, the IOC, governs the Olympic movement, and they have basically a sister organization. They're not legally the same entities, but it's sort of as a partner is the International Paralympic Committee that governs the Paralympic movement, including the Paralympic Games. Mm-hmm. I'll use Tokyo as an example. The Tokyo Organizing Committee, right? They organized the 2020 Games. They hosted both events. And so mostly, and they do this, mostly the staff sort of just stays with them they run the Olympic Games, and then they have a couple-week break to kind of turn the venues over, and then they run the Paralympic Games, basically 2 weeks later. Mm-hmm. And it's different in scale a bit. So it's fewer athletes go to the Paralympics than the Olympics. Mm-hmm. We had about 4,400 or something like that went to the Paralympics, and I think the Olympic side is close to 10,000. Mm-hmm. We had fewer sports, actually. So we had 22 summer Paralympic sports, and there are 6 winter Paralympic sports that I don't remember that were on the Olympic side, but it was like, I want to say 40 sports or something. They added a bunch of new sports this year. So we have fewer sports. But the thing that is unique about the Paralympic movement is athletes are organized by disability type. And so, So you think about age or gender as a way to find fairness in sports, right? Mm-hmm. In Paralympic sport, you have to, you don't do age because everyone's competing as an adult, but you definitely do gender. And the disability is the other way that you're creating fairness. And so, for example, my son Ezra is an above knee amputee. He only really competes against above knee amputees. If an amputee has a knee or a lower leg, it's really not working, or someone in his class, the lower leg isn't really functioning. So they're evaluating that it's functioning at probably less than 50%. So it's closer to like you didn't have the lower leg versus you did. So that's really, it's a beautiful thing. The classification system, it's a little intimidating for new athletes to sort of get there. But it's just a physical therapy, medical evaluation to figure out your disability. And then you're put in this class. You're basically given a number, and then it allows you to compete fairly. And so in a team sport like wheelchair basketball, every athlete has a number, and you just have to have a certain number of points on the court at any one time. So you can kind of mix and match athletes, but you kind of need, a 1, a 2, a 3, you kind of need to have a few different of these types of athletes on the court at the same time. And so that's one thing that's really, I think, misunderstood or just not understood at all about the Paralympic system, which is it's a system of fairness, and it's really important. Is it perfect? No. We got lots of drama. We got lots of drama, right? Because you have to draw a line somewhere, right? And wherever you draw the line, somebody's just on the other side of that line. Right. And so we have fairness challenges, and it'll never be perfect, but man, it's pretty amazing. And so that's kind of high level, right? And I did get to go to the Rio Games with the organizing committee for LA 2024 at the time. So I wasn't on staff, but I was sort of a friend and partner and I got to see the games from behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. This round at Tokyo, I got to go as a parent guardian of a minor, which is a credential. And I think the Paralympics are going to try to keep it. I've heard rumors that they like this credential to give the kids a little extra support, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of kids that make the Paralympic Games, and it's kind of overwhelming.
Because they're not used to operating. They're used to being on their own and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's like shipping them off to college, but they're only 15, 16 years old. It's pretty young. Now, there's a lot of staff, and it's a pretty safe place to be, but it's still overwhelming. And so, so I just, with Tokyo, there was no fans allowed. They had limited coaching slots. It was tricky, but I was able to sort of sneak in as a parent. And so I got to see it kind of from an athlete and coach standpoint, because I got to go to the village, have meals with Ezra, check in on him, hang out in the lab. I couldn't go into the rooms and stuff like that, but I could kind of be around. And then we jumped on the bus and went to the training venue or the competition venue. So it kind of got the best of both worlds. Like, it was sort of like I was a coach, but I didn't really have to worry about coaching. Right.
So you had all the benefits and none of the responsibilities, right?
It's funny. About 2 days in, I thought to myself, I got to really appreciate this, because I'll never get this credential again. He'll go to Paris, but he'll be 19. He won't have a the guardian. So when I think about sort of what the Olympics represents, and I'm a huge Olympics fan. I've watched it since I was a tiny kid. I love the stories. I love all the sports. Like, I could watch the Olympics 24/7. I love the Olympics. So Paralympics kind of has a similar vibe. Every country that has hosted has a different approach to filling the stands. And so in London, it was crazy, packed house. In Rio, they struggled to fill the stands a bit. You can watch Rising Phoenix for kind of a little backstory on what happened there, but they ended up giving all of the tickets away. So in Rio, you saw like school kids and, community groups that got tickets to go. It was still relatively,
empty.
I mean, yeah, like the track venue was huge. So it was like maybe half full at best. Right. But it looks, I mean, the signage and the stadiums and the arenas are very similar to the Olympic side, so that the image you see, it looks is almost exactly the same. The logos are a little different, maybe. The Paralympic Agitos is the three little marks, but it kind of looks and feels kind of similar. Obviously, this year we didn't have any fans in the stands, so that's really strange.
Right. Unfortunately, Tokyo's very strict with those things.
But it's same village, right? I mean, literally, it's the Olympic Village during the Olympics, and it's the Paralympic Village during the Paralympics, but it's the same exact place, right? Most of the venues that they use for the Olympic side are just transitioned into Paralympic.
It was just an easy fix.
Yeah.
They just literally That's cool.
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty cool. So since 1988, the Olympic IOC and the IPC have had this partnership where they kind of jointly, kind of collaborate on venues, because prior to that, the Paralympics were held in different cities than the Olympics. And now it's kind of
coming together slowly but surely.
Different events. And this is important because people like to tell Ezra he's an Olympian, and he's not. He didn't compete in the Olympics, and he's not even a para-Olympian, because that's not the word. It's a Paralympian, So
Paralympian, okay.
The difference, it's
you correct. You corrected. Look, I'm over here. I'm learning. You corrected me now. So Paralympian. Let me write this down. Paralympian.
But what's so special about the movement right now, and maybe you can come to Paris 2024 with us.
I'm coming,
and you'll get the feeling. It's still really small. Everybody knows everybody. I'll give you the example in Rio. So in Rio, I probably saw 15, 16 different sports popping in. I could go in any venue. I had a great credential in Rio. And we would walk into these venues, and the crowd is mostly locals, Brazilians, right? Lots of kids, depending on the time of day. And then you would see a little cluster right in a corner of whatever, if it was U.S. against Australia, right, in wheelchair basketball, you see a little cluster of U.S. fans in one corner, and you'd see a little cluster of Australians on the other side. And if you walked up to that cluster, it's all the parents and friends of the athletes that are on the court. So you literally, and if you are at your bar in your hotel and you see somebody wearing a Team USA jersey or shirt, you just walk up to them, and they are directly connected to an athlete in the Paralympic Games, almost without a doubt, because we don't have fans that travel the way they do for the Olympics. We don't have fans that travel the way the World Cup fans do, right? Like like soccer people go to World Cup because
they go everywhere. Yeah,
but we don't have those sort of general population fans yet. The supporters are close to the athletes, and so so it's very accessible to connect to the athletes too. So the movement's so small, everybody kind of knows everybody. I mean, I don't know, I'm not trying to brag, but I know a huge number of Paralympians that were in Tokyo personally, and so,
that's good.
And the average kid that comes to the Angel City Games, our event, knows multiple Paralympians that competed at the games. So it's as if you were a little kid at your local little rec center playing basketball, and you got to meet Steph Curry or LeBron.
Wow.
Here, because there's kind of nothing in between, right? We don't have the system of sport. We're all one together. The community and the elites are all kind of muddled up together, which makes it so beautiful. It's so quaint. And listen, if your podcast blows up and everybody does their part, it won't be like that forever.
Yeah.
Right?
It won't. Yeah, true. It won't. Yeah. Because you get to a point to where you become out of reach. Yeah. But it seems like within the Paralympic community, which is beautiful, because I think I love small communities in any industry where you can talk and you can communicate with everybody. Because to me, it creates more of a genuine foundation.
Yeah.
Right. So you could tell, I guess everybody, I guess I'll have to come myself, but everybody, I'm assuming everybody's known each other for years and years and years. And it's like, you see, oh, hey, I see you a few years ago at Rio, So that's really that's nice.
It's really special. And when it's so small, there's not a lot of money in this. You're doing it
from the heart.
From the heart. It's whether you're a coach or an athlete or anything. It's all love, and it's a powerful community once you sort of connect into it.
So I do want to ask this. Ezra, if I'm not mistaken, he's 16, right? Yeah. Was he even with you there? Was he at all overwhelmed by the experience of being in Tokyo and competing in this big event? Was he a little bit overwhelmed?
I have to say, I don't think so.
You don't think so? You don't think it wasn't too big for him? That's good.
I don't think so. So he's been on big stages his whole life. So he's been a motivational speaker his whole life. He's spoken to basketball arenas, 18,000 people.
Oh, okay.
He was little. He's been on the Ellen Show, which is taped live, and which means you don't get a do-over.
Yeah, it is what it is.
You got to nail it. And so he's always sort of lived for the moment. He's always been the kid on the field that you get him the football on the last play because he's probably going to figure out how to score. Same thing for basketball. So he's kind of always had this clutch mentality. He's never really been – when he first did a arena full of, people for a speaking gig, I said, Ezra, how nervous were you when you walked out on that stage? Because my chest is like, my heart's coming out of my chest. I'm so nervous for you. He's like, I wasn't nervous at all. So it's fascinating. So he doesn't really get that nervous. But this one, I have to say, he's sort of been preparing and planning and thinking about it for a long time. So NBC made a big deal about it about him because it's so cute. My wife recorded him saying when he was 11, I'm training for the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games.
Wow. So he spoke this into existence.
Yeah, he knew that's what he was doing and what he wanted to do. And 5 years later, we're there. So it's been in his consciousness for a long time. And then COVID kind of screwed things up for everybody.
Naturally, yeah.
Pre-COVID, he made the team as a 14-year-old, and he went to the Junior Worlds, he went to the Pan American Games, and then he went to the World Championships. So that summer, we were in Switzerland, Lima, Peru, and Dubai. And he competed against the top guys in the world. He competed at the World Championships. He made the finals in his 3 events. Skinny little 14-year-old kid. I mean, he's a man now compared to years ago. So he had a taste of it. And Peru, the Pan American Games, was incredible. Beautiful venue, packed. It was sometimes hard to find a seat. It wasn't the big Paralympic stadiums of 80,000, but it was a nice, probably. It was
a nice venue, yeah.
Yeah, like an MLS type, like 15, 20,000, like a little venue, packed. Great signage, announcers, like the whole 9 yards. So he kind of had a taste of this, in 2019. Now, obviously, COVID, and we lost a year in there. We lost a season, basically.
Yeah.
So he was, and listen, he understands the importance of the mental game. And so we have a sports psychologist, and my wife has taught him how to meditate and breathe and do all these things to sort of keep his nervous system in check. But if you watch the videos of him in Tokyo, he was having a blast out there.
Yeah.
He was really in the moment. He's trained incredibly hard the last couple of years to be ready for this moment. He was ready for this moment. Now, he didn't do as well as he wanted. He was in the high jump, he was really disappointed. And as a parent, my heart just broke because it's like, what can you say?
What can you say? Yeah.
But yeah, so surprisingly, he doesn't get too nervous. He got stressed. It was a tricky to manage the schedule because he had a lot of media and a lot of sponsor obligations. And so that's where I really helped him kind of manage his schedule and, kind of block and tackle how are we going to get everything done we needed to get done. And I wanted him to have left Tokyo doing his best to share his story and be an advocate for the world to see, not knowing how he was going to perform on the track, but just knowing we got to find a balance. We can't just come here and do sports and then run away.
Right. It's bigger than that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than sport. So let's use this as a moment to, get the word out and build his personal brand, but also kind of impact and inspire others. And so that he got a little stressed a couple times when I was like, you got to get up early to do this media.
Well, I mean, that's what comes with being a high level athlete. And you know what? I'm gonna tell you this. It's good. I would say that he had, maybe as far as the performance go, he had this experience. Now he's young. He essentially isn't even in his physical prime yet. So I know
for track, right? Yeah. That's mid-20s.
Yeah, mid-20s. That's what I'm saying. So, he's competing against guys that are, older than he is. But, definitely doing a good job as far as getting them prepared for the media side. Because, once you reach the pinnacle, I just talked about that earlier, it's treacherous up there. You have to know how to navigate through the media.
It really is. And I think, I was listening to your dialogue before I jumped on. And I do think I saw up close and personal a lot of the mental health struggles that these athletes go through.
Yes.
And I'm sure on the Olympic side it was very similar, which was COVID created this kind of this dark cloud that you couldn't escape because you were testing every day while you were there. The Tokyo.
Oh, that's right. Wow. Okay.
The Tokyo playbook was tight. You were testing twice before you got on the plane, at the airport when you arrived in Japan, and then every day going forward. And so there was always a risk that happened. And then, I wrote about it a little bit on my Facebook page for kind of our followers. But in sport, unlike many other parts of life, your failures are so visible.
Right.
They're just out there.
They're out there. So you're subconscious. Right. You can't. It always makes you appreciate, just being, I hate saying this like this, but just being a nobody and not having to worry about, you can make mistakes. Right. So. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
even if you're a CEO, you can just lie on LinkedIn in your resume that say, I didn't get fired from that job. I left it because I didn't like my boss or something. Everybody does that. So these athletes have no choice.
Yeah.
There's no BS in it. It's God's honest truth out there on the track. So, or the court or whatever it is. So, so I think that's, I really appreciate your conversation about that earlier, because I think that is something we all don't fully appreciate and understand.
Not at all. Right. And like you said, that's all athletes. It once again, it just makes you feel for them. And we need to have a little bit more understanding of what they're going through. But I do want to ask you this, because at this point you're getting me excited. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to go to the next games. But
you're coming. I'm telling you.
I'm coming. You got me. You got me, Clay. Look, maybe I got to find a way to get some credentials. We're going to find a way. But why, if in your opinion, right? No, you may not have the full answer. Why do you think the Paralympics doesn't get as much coverage? Because you've seen them up front. These are great athletes. They're not just, they're just disabled. Like, they're really good at what they do. Why do you think the Paralympics doesn't get the media coverage that maybe it deserves?
So I'm going to speak to the experience of this community in the United States.
Okay.
There's going to be some countries where it's very similar, but then there's going to be some other countries where it's very different. I think that we struggle with disability in the United States. I think that in many communities, if not almost all of the different racial and ethnic communities, we tend to sort of cover up disability, or we have historically tended to cover it up.
That's true.
Kind of, I'm not going to bring that kid out too much. I'm going to keep, if he's got a prosthetic, I'll keep him in pants. We're not going to talk to him about it. We're going to kind of ignore it. And
wow.
And so I just think that's, if you look at the history of the Americans with Disabilities Act and the disability rights movement, some things worked and they were kind of somewhat efficient, but I think we still really struggle with how to handle, how to manage, how to approach, how to view people with disabilities. And so I think that's a barrier to coverage.
Wow.
I think it's sad for sure. But I think we struggle to see let's say the potential of people living with disabilities rather than the things that they can't do. Right. So I think that lives up here. And then, so if you look at how the media has often covered disability, we call it inspiration porn. You know, it's objectifying people with disabilities, making it a sad story. So you're paying attention, your heart's, you start to, I cry a little bit because our athletes don't want that. They don't want,
they're regular athletes. Yeah.
They don't want people to feel sorry for them. And so I just think the media has struggled to portray disability in the right light. And I think it just sort of permeates, throughout society. I think things are changing. I think things are getting better. And I do think, corporate America struggles with disability.
100%.
Corporate America. How many boards have a person with disability on them? How many senior executive teams have ever had a person with disability on them? Very few. People with disabilities really struggle to get jobs, even today, which is sort of hard to fathom. And so, they're not visible in corporate America. They're kind of invisible, right? Socially, they're not in. Hollywood kind of goes like this with disability, but there'll be ways where you start to see people and then they kind of just go away, and then maybe they come back 10 years later. So, I just think it's a tough issue for us in America. We haven't really gotten our arms around it, but I do feel like it's changing. And I think some really great companies are kind of leading the way. And especially when it comes to sport, if you look at the coverage. So let me just tell you what the NBC coverage for the Paralympic Games has been the last 3 cycles.
Ooh,
London. 2-hour special about the Paralympic Games. I'm not kidding you. Go look it up. Wow. Rio, 66 hours. Now, there were places you could find it streaming on, Paralympics.org or whatever, but like NBC coverage somewhere on the Peacock, 66 hours. And I believe Citibank was the main driver that year to grow the coverage. And I think they kind of committed to extra advertising support for NBC. This year we had 1,200 hours. That's amazing.
Yeah, right? it's growing.
And this year, I think, and listen, I don't work at NBC. I don't know all the behind the scenes, but it looks like Toyota was the main advertiser that sort of put the backstop on it for NBC and helped grow the coverage. Wow. Now, did enough people see it? I don't know. But if it's not available to be seen, you can't even get this conversation started. So for us in the United States, this is really big news. And NBC did a 2-hour recap of the Paralympic Games this year on prime time, the Sunday after the games finished. And so we have, this isn't orders of magnitude better than it was, right?
So basically, and I would agree, the progress is being made in our country.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because maybe not even in just the Paralympics. Like, I don't know if you have disabled athletes right now that are, and granted, these guys are in high school, but they're thriving. I know there's a very, very, very good one-arm basketball player that's starting to get Division I. They're going to sending him offers and things of that nature. And if you
didn't he accept somewhere?
I think he did. He might have committed. He might have committed somewhere, but it was Division I. And then you had the running back Derrick Henry, his alma mater, his high school. His rushing record was just broken by a disabled athlete, a guy with only one arm. So, it's the progress is being made, and I'm definitely excited. And once again, I keep saying this, but I'm excited and to even be able to be a part of it. Hopefully,
Yeah, I remember at the Angel Sea Games, and then come to Paris with us.
Let's do it, right? So. Obviously, we're talking about coverage, right? I'm trying to become an outlet, but you're already an outlet of it. You have talked to us about the Sports Save My Life podcast. Tell us about that.
So, I've already kind of touched on a couple reasons why Angel City Sports creating our own podcast was important to me. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially, I think that our sort of hidden secret or our biggest asset that is, say, unexploited is our stories. Our stories, every athlete in our community has a powerful story, either how they acquired their disability or how they got through childhood with a disability. Like, this kind of doesn't matter where they entered the disabled community. They've got a good story. And so I know that's sort of our, it's important to who we are. It's sort of a strength of ours that hasn't been tapped in a large degree. And then when I look at how the media often tells our stories in this sort of ableism, inspiration porn manner, it doesn't really do the athletes justice.
Right.
So it's not how the athletes would want to tell their stories.
Right. Right.
Almost always. Right. It is off from how the athlete, if the athlete was a producer on that show, they would not say,
I don't like this.
So I've been watching this. Ezra, my son's been a media darling since he was young. He was 4 years old. He was on Good Morning America. And so I've had a front row seat to this for a long time, and it bothers me. It bothers 100%. And so I just got, at some point during the pandemic, like, let's just launch a show, and it will be in the voice of the athletes. And so that's all we're doing. Wow. We're sharing the athletes' stories in their voices. Yeah, I ask a couple of questions along the way, but it's really giving them a place to share their story in their words, and no one can mess those up, right? Like, you can't edit their words out. I'm not. We might cut a section out because I got to get it in under an hour, but whatever. But like, it's their story, and they get to own it, and it's powerful, and it's perfect the way it is. It doesn't need the sad music. It doesn't, I go through an emotional journey depending on their story with them because I empathize. But that's what that is. It's an effort to grow the movement, grow awareness and understanding about these sports and the movement, and then these amazing athletes, and hopefully over time help build their personal brands so that they can monetize and leverage. But it's really about, it's just telling the best, most authentic stories we can, and letting the world get to know these athletes because they deserve more.
Wow. So, okay. And that's great. Cause I've gotten a chance to watch, one episode of Sports Saved My Life. So not only are you providing an initial or another outlet for the Paralympic community, you're giving these athletes a voice to actually tell their stories the way they want to tell them. And I think what you're saying is everything adding up. You're teaching me a lot right now, Clayton. I'm over here. It's like I'm having an epiphany, right? But essentially, when we listen to sports stories, like I was just talking about The Last Dance, it should be intense. It should be epic, right? Yeah. You should feel like, man, I'm in the moment, not, sad music. Because once again, they've made it this far. They're professional athletes. Essentially, they're professional athletes, right? So they want to be treated as such. So I like that. That's a nice change of pace, definitely for Paralympians.
Yeah, and listen, they need as much boosting as they can because the traditional media coverage is still pretty minimal. Look at the top Paralympians, and there's not many that have really grown a huge social media following, a handful. So, whatever we can do to help the careers of these athletes. But honestly, like, the most selfish reason why we started the show was I want to find more athletes. We want to change more lives. And so the hope is by listening to these stories, people will start to see themselves in these stories and be inspired to come see what we're doing. So that little girl, that might have been injured in a car accident, Caitlin River's episode, she's a wheelchair tennis player, and she just went to Tokyo in paracanoe. She was injured in a car, spinal cord injury. She just buckled her seatbelt the second before the accident. Right. And the seatbelt, kept her waist. It was that old school, that middle belt, right? And so she forward, broke her back, paralyzed ever since, but she lived, and she wouldn't have lived otherwise. So that's so the little girls that can hear Caitlin's story and then imagine, oh my gosh, Caitlin's gone to the Paralympics in 2 different sports.
I can do it too.
She's probably going to medal in Paris. in paracanoe, which is a brand new sport for us. So, so that's the hope, is that our, the broader disabled community can start to see themselves in these stories, and at least it gives them motivation to come see what we're doing, or go find a program in their area. Just get involved, get engaged. Don't stay on the sidelines.
And that is very big, big than most people understand. You need to see someone that can relate with your situation, so you can feel like you can do those things too. So that's even bigger, right? We have a lot of kids. We have a lot of kids that are disabled in our country and the world. So, they definitely need to see someone like them doing it big. I will say this, I actually, and just to add to your point earlier, saying that America maybe doesn't focus as much on their disabled people as much as other countries. I was in the Navy, and I actually got the opportunity to go to, I was in Hong Kong, so I went on like a little, they give us little trips we can go on and stuff like that. So they actually had an organization, and it was a big building. And literally what they did was they taught all type of disabled kids. They literally trained them from the ground up, taught them all kind of skills, and they pushed them out to the workforce. And I was very impressed by that. So when you said America, I was like, yeah, you know what? I haven't seen anything. It could be, but I haven't seen anything like that in America yet.
Well, and every country's different in the structure. Countries that have sort of national healthcare tend to fund Paralympic sport. We don't have national healthcare really. It's up to the states, and so what you see is the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee that is in charge of putting a team together for the Olympic and Paralympic Games. It's a nonprofit, and they have to fundraise just like I do. That's not a government entity. So our team that we send is, funded by the nonprofit sector, basically. And a lot of these teams we compete against are state sponsored with like salary. Like there's a real, I think I don't have the data. I'd love to have the data, but country, what are they spending right on their team? And if you broke it down by athlete, and how are the athletes surviving? Our guys are kind of hand to mouth, barely surviving, but some of these countries are putting real money
behind their kids. Okay. Wow.
They want to win medals.
Yeah.
So
they're giving them the high tech, the workout technology and all that stuff. That's good. No, that's good. But that just shows that obviously America is going to follow suit pretty soon. Once they realize how great that our Paralympians are as well. So
we'll get there. Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming, right? So. Once again, really great insight. I've learned a lot today. I don't know about you guys, fans, but I'm over here. I literally have notes and everything. I feel like I'm in class. So, but for you, Clayton, I want to know, how can the fans reach Clayton Frech if they want to contact you? How do they reach you?
I mean, I'm pretty accessible. If someone's listening to this in the car or whatever, just find Angel City Sports on social media or on the web, and send in a note, or say you heard me on the show or whatever, and they'll connect me. I'm just Clayton.Frech on Instagram, Clayton Frech on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to track down, Clayton at angelcitysports.org by email, but pretty accessible. We have a nice sized team. It's not as many people as I'd like, but we got a nice team behind me at Angel City. So, I often kind of bring others in that know things better than I do. But yeah, and honestly, if there's people listening that know someone with a physical disability out there, it's 15% of the U.S. population lives with a physical disability. And this is not intellectual or Special Olympics type stuff. This is a physical disability. That's it. And so the numbers are staggering. That's like 50 million people. And so if you know somebody, check in with them. Are they doing sports? Have they heard of adaptive or Paralympic sports? And you can connect them to Angel City. You can connect them to our, friends and partners. There's hundreds of programs around the country. And, get your butt off the couch. Let's go.
And look, hey, being a football fan, I'm like, I've met so many people that I'm like, man, this guy would have been a great athlete if he would have just played. So I can imagine just in the Paralympics, you have some people that are just, right, like you said, sit on the couch watching TV. Like, dude, you could be in Tokyo or something like that. You're that talented, you know? So no, that's very, very good. Obviously, guys, all Clayton's social media handles are uniform. So you shouldn't have a hard time reaching them. But as always, you know, it was definitely a pleasure meeting you. Yeah, you guys, you would think that me and him have known each other for like years, but this is like my first time meeting him face to face. And it was a great, I definitely had a great time, learned a lot about the Paralympic community. You know, I think obviously we can walk away agreeing that these athletes deserve to be mentioned among the elite. But you know, as I told Dave before, you know, I'm excited to just become an extra outlet towards the movement, and add and give them that boost. So I will wrap up with this. I don't know if you're a Marvel Comics fan, right? So Uncle Ben, he told Peter, he said, with great power comes great responsibility. So since you're doing great things at Angel City Sports, all right, and the Sports Save My Life podcast, you have a responsibility to come back on the Breakroom Breakdown Sports podcast and talk to us. So yeah, no, most definitely, it was definitely a blessing having you on. And I guess, you know, I'm in San Diego, so you're in LA. So hey, look, it's nothing but a drive away. I have family there, so I drive back every once in a blue moon. But when are the next? How about this? When is your next event? What, fill us in on that.
Yeah, so COVID's kind of messed up with our schedule. So in the summer, usually late June or early July, we host the Angel City Games presented by the Hartford. 2020, we went virtual. This year, we couldn't figure out the summer with COVID because LA was kind of opening up, but then Delta hit. I mean, it was just a mess. But we're planning to do the games the first weekend of winter break. So all the local kids coming out of LA Unified and the Southern California area schools can come to the game. So we're going to do probably a 3-day event. We don't have a venue finalized, but so I think it's like the 17th, 18th, 19th of December. So that's a little unusual. It's not usually in the winter, but we're going to do it because we feel like the community is really kind of been up against it and not had the same access to, you know, the bigger events that they might normally have this year. So we still wanted to do something before the year ended. And then next summer, we'll go back to that summer schedule. So literally barely 6 months later, you're going to see another Angel City Games, and then we'll kind of hopefully be able to stay in that cadence of being in the summer. And you know, it's like the Paralympics, but it's for everybody. You don't have to qualify to come. You just got to show up. You know, and, you can be any age, disability. You know, like it's a really fun event and really for everyone. So that's kind of the big thing. You know, we do other big clinics and festivals throughout the year. So definitely keep you posted. But yeah, let's get you up here in December.
I will. I just put it on. It's funny. I have another event early December, but I said, okay, let me just add this onto the calendar. We'll plan it in. I'll make the drive down. But this is really great. It was a pleasure having you on, Clayton, and I definitely look forward to talking in the future. Outside of that, man, I know you got some work to do. Have a blessed day, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right.